Touch is exploratory. Touch is exploration. Touch is a conversation that you have with yourself. For most of us, our bodies are functional. Touch is mostly utilitarian. But what if touch could also be an artistic pursuit? Can we relate to our body from this new perspective? Is this something that can be explored through touch? Can this online touch workshop be the first steps towards experimenting with touch as narrative? Let's begin by closing our eyes, breathing steadily until we feel grounded. Let's start small. Let's pick a finger or our thumb and hold it. Hold it firmly. Rub your skin. Apply some pressure to the nail. Touch your cuticle, the skin around your nail. Venture towards your knuckle. Stay there a moment. Feel the bone under your fingertip. Feel the grooves in your skin. Now embrace your whole hand. You may feel some resistance or a chill or warmth or see colour or be more aware of sound. Allow yourself to follow your instincts. Let them lead you into another world. Drift off into another world. Allow yourself to fall into a pit of black. And there, play. Learn to play. Play in the shadows. There in the shadows you will find a hand. This hand belongs to our protagonist. Reach out for this hand. Embody this hand. This hand is now your hand, the one that has been missing. We're going to carry on exploring guided touch narrative, and I would like you to keep your eyes closed while I read out the following guided instructions. Let's practice the guided touch narrative instructions together before listening to moment 1. Take hold of your hand and tickle the palm with your fingertips. Gently repeat this action on the back of your hand. Then experiment with a long squeeze on your hand. Now try giving your forearm a squeeze. Keep squeezing until you feel uncomfortable. Then release your grip. We are going to repeat these actions while travelling up your arm towards your shoulder. Squeeze, hold, release. Squeeze, hold, release. Take your time and become aware of the sensation As we listen to moment 1, we will be repeating these actions. Squeeze, hold, release. Now try the same action on your shoulder. Squeeze, hold, release. And then on the base of your neck. Squeeze, hold, release. Finally, rest your hand on the back of your neck. Pause here for a while and take a deep breath. Moment 1 will be repeated twice to give you lots of time to explore the narrative of this touch sequence. These touch instructions are a guide. Please feel free to also improvise and experiment with how you want to touch your hand, forearm, shoulder, and neck while listening to moment 1. Remember to keep your eyes closed while listening to moment 1 and continuously engage in the touch instruction as we have practiced. Moment 1. Childhood. You are 2 years old. They are playing. They are playing. They are playing. They are playing on top of a hill. They are on top of a hill and they are playing on top of a hill. They are in the park. There is a toddler on top of a hill. There is a toddler playing in the park on top of a hill. They are 2 years old. You are 2 years old. I am 2. I am running down the hill. I am running down the hill. I am running down the hill. Your mummy's chasing you. If she catches you, you might be tickled. My mummy is chasing me. I'm running as fast as I can. She catches you. She catches me. She puts her arms around me. Your mummy puts her arms all around you. You can feel her arms holding you tightly. Mummy has long arms. She is squeezing you. It's too tight, Mummy. It's too tight, Mummy. Mummy, it's too tight. You want to pull away. You feel. I feel. I feel. I feel. You feel closed off. I feel your mummy's breath on the back of your neck. I feel odd. You want your mummy to hold you, but you also want to pull away. Pulling away is the best bit. Moment 1. Childhood. You are 2 years old. They are playing. They are playing. They are playing. They are playing on top of a hill. They are on top of a hill and they are playing on top of a hill. They are in the park. There is a toddler on top of a hill. There is a toddler playing in the park on top of a hill. They are 2 years old. You are 2 years old. I am 2. I am running down the hill. I am running down the hill. I am running down the hill. Your mummy's chasing you. If she catches you, you might be tickled. My mummy is chasing me. I'm running as fast as I can. She catches you. She catches me. She puts her arms around me. Your mummy puts her arms all around you. You can feel her arms holding you tightly. Mummy has long arms. She is squeezing you. It's too tight, Mummy. It's too tight, Mummy. Mummy, it's too tight. You want to pull away. You feel. I feel. I feel. I feel. You feel closed off. I feel your mummy's breath on the back of your neck. I feel odd. You want your mummy to hold you, but you also want to pull away. Pulling away is the best bit. You are 2 years old. You are a toddler. You are a girl. Touch is exploratory. Touch is exploration. Touch is a conversation that you have with yourself. For most of us, our bodies are functional. Touch is mostly utilitarian. But what if touch could also be an artistic pursuit? Can we relate to our body from this new perspective? Is this something that can be explored through touch? Can this online touch workshop be the first steps towards experimenting with touch as narrative? This guided touch narrative will involve applied force to your lower legs. Please be aware and listen to your own body during this exploration and adjust the actions accordingly. Let's practice the guided touch narrative instructions together before listening to moment 3. Clench your fists. Squeeze as hard as you can until you feel your nails digging into the palm of your hand. Clench your upper body. Let the tension creep up your arms and into your throat. Then begin to bang your fists onto your shins, moving up and down the bony part of your legs. These touch instructions are a guide. Please feel free to also improvise and experiment with how you want to touch and bang your legs while listening to moment 3. Moment 3 will be repeated twice to give you lots of time to experience and explore this touch narrative sequence. Remember to keep your eyes closed while listening to moment 3 and continuously engage in the touch narrative instructions we have just practiced. Moment 3. Childhood. You are 9 years old. You are a child. You are 9 years old. You are a 9-year-old child. You are in a concrete playground. It's lunchtime and the girls are running away. The boys are brutal. You are 9. You are up against the wall. I am 9. I am the same size as the one in front that kicks. The black, thick shoes they wear do not dent. Iron legs won't fall. Iron legs won't fall. Iron legs won't fall. That's Paul Maritzi. He's angry because I won't let him pull up my dress. I'm holding on to his arm. The kicking won't stop. I'm holding on tightly to his green school jumper. The kicking won't stop. There is a hole in his sleeve. The kicking won't stop. I slip my finger through it. I squeeze his flesh. I pinch it. I dig my short nails into it. The kicking won't stop. I have every intention of piercing his skin. The kicking won't stop. I don't want to fall and I don't want to cry, so I hold on to him. I won't let his hands be his own. The kicking won't stop. The kicking won't stop. The kicking won't stop. But then he calls his friends and iron legs fall, iron legs fall, iron legs fall. Shall I ring the bell? Yes, please. You are a child. You are 9 years old. You are a 9-year-old child. You are in a concrete playground. It's lunchtime and the girls are running away. The boys are brutal. You are 9. You are up against the wall. I am 9. I am the same size as the one in front that kicks. The black, thick shoes they wear do not dent. Iron legs won't fall. Iron legs won't fall. Iron legs won't fall. That's Paul Maritzi. He's angry because I won't let him pull up my dress. I'm holding on to his arm. The kicking won't stop. I'm holding on tightly to his green school jumper. The kicking won't stop. There is a hole in his sleeve. The kicking won't stop. I slip my finger through it. I squeeze his flesh. I pinch it. I dig my short nails into it. The kicking won't stop. I have every intention of piercing his skin. The kicking won't stop. I don't want to fall and I don't want to cry, so I hold on to him. I won't let his hands be his own. The kicking won't stop. The kicking won't stop. The kicking won't stop. But then he calls his friends and iron legs fall, iron legs fall, iron legs fall. Shall I ring the bell? Yes, please. You are a 9-year-old child. You are a child. You are a girl. when you're ready, put your cameras on and we're going to all join in a conversation about your experiences. Hello everyone, thank you so much for taking part in that. We are going to have everyone, we want to give everyone an opportunity to just talk about their immediate experiences, whether it's with moment 3 or moment 1. And I was just going to go around the board as I see your name. Unless anyone wants to specifically go first, you can put your hand up. Otherwise, I was just going to work my way through the board as I see your name to just get your immediate experiences of your immediate feedback based on those experiences. So Daniel, you're the first person I see on my screen. Would you like to comment on either moment 1 or moment 3, or give your feedback over the experience in a more general way?
Yeah, maybe in a more general way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, it was great. I think it was really, felt like it was really carefully thought through. It felt like the touch elements were like part of immersing me in the story. And it felt to me like the prompt about whether touch could be its own art form and its own narrative is so interesting. And I guess at this stage, it felt like a really good way of immersing me in the poem and in the scenario, rather than a kind of experience on its own terms or exploring touch on its own terms. But that was great. I just had a big row with my mum yesterday for the first time in ages, and that meant that which meant that I found that kind of I found that difficult, and I was thinking about like the universal idea of a mother being a good thing, but then also I guess there was something in there about that being already kind of undermined in a way. Yeah, I guess also like it's always a bit strange, these scenarios, because I was also thinking about what I would have to say when you asked me to reflect on my experience. So that always creates a kind of slightly strange way of engaging. But yeah, that's kind of, yeah. That's
it's always odd having to contextualize your experience on the spot as soon as the experience is over as well, because you kind of need time to process. But with a 1 hour limit, we have to put everyone under a little bit of pressure of going, respond. What did you think?
Yeah. 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 I mean, it felt. I did think about I've not experienced. I think it felt like an experience that I've not had, and I wondered about how it would be for someone who might have had a similar experience and what kind of care they might need, either before or after, to process that.
Yeah, I guess there's 2 things going on, really, isn't there? There's the subtext of the narrative, and then the exploration of the touch and the experiment with how the touch changes the narrative. So we are really aware that we're asking the audience to really participate in like a physical way, as well as an emotional and an intellectual way. And in a normal environment, the audience would have a lot more time within this experience. So I totally recognize that. And I think it's important that we let everyone know that as well. Like in a normal situation, it wouldn't be done online, and the participant would have more space within each moment. I mean, really, you probably wouldn't experience 2 moments in the same time either. So we kind of wanted, through this exploration, to just give people a really big chunk of a taster, just to give everyone enough material really to test. But maybe it would have been more useful for everyone if we did just do 1 moment, and that would be interesting to ask someone else if that also comes up later on, if they felt that maybe 1 moment would have been enough, whether or not it was a bit of an overkill to have 2 moments. But let's go to Robin. Thank you, Daniel.
Thanks.
what contribution would you like to make, whether it's about your experience or the pointers that we were just discussing with Daniel?
I thought it was the second piece, or number 3 as it was, that confused me with 1 and 3, but it's interesting because I mean it was, and as someone growing up as a child with a physical impairment, it was very evocative anyway, because, you know, yeah, the only difference between that story and mine would have been I didn't wear a dress to school. But what was interesting was that and much more on the second one was that the more anxious, and I know the pace didn't change, but the kind of the heightened anxiety, the more I felt my hitting of my shins. So as the woman telling the story was, you know, the iron legs bit, and, you know, kick, and then wanting that need to grab them to take control of the situation, I actually felt my responses heighten.
Did you feel like you wanted to protect the protagonist? Is that what you mean? Or did you feel like you were yourself experiencing it more in first person, or more as a voyeur on someone else? This was happening to someone else in your experience?
No, I mean, I think it took me to a place where I could have been that person. I was that person, if you like. Okay, so I didn't want to protect them because effectively I was being them. And I mean, yes, there is a degree of wanting to protect because I wouldn't want to see that happen. But I think in terms of the, you know, the response, the physical response, was really, you know, was real. So it increased. So my sensations got more as my anxiety as that person got more.
We've never had so many male participants in the workshop before, and it is interesting to ask this question to the men in the group. How did it feel placing yourself in the shoes of the female protagonist? Or when you were experiencing it, did gender not really play a part in the experience for you? And if I
was just say, I don't. The recognition would just be about the clothing. I don't. You know, it wasn't. You know, it was yes. The second one, the girl left. I mean, she was left by the other girls because they obviously felt more threatened, and then this person wasn't able to move. But I didn't take. That was, you know, the people are bullied, whatever the gender, and, you know, it could have been equally girls doing the kicking of a boy or another girl.
Good. Okay, thank you, Robin. If I can move on to Ian, so the next person on the board. And again, you can either comment on what's already been discussed, or you can talk about your own response to either moment.
Yeah, a bit like Robin, I got a bit confused as to what had happened to number 2, but there we go. I think that I was sort of listening to the instruction, the first set of instructions, and for number 1, I felt like the story and the actions that we've been given didn't quite coalesce for me. So the talking about the hill and going down the hill, I kind of thought, I felt like I should have been up on my shoulder and I was down on my wrist, and that felt a bit sort of not quite right. And then when really weird feedback. when mother was holding, I found myself holding on to my arms like that, so that it felt like there was the arms were around. But for number 3, the second one, I kind of dropped out of the story to a little bit because the action was just the one and repeated, so it felt like it was a bit repetitive in terms of the action. But I got what was being said about the kicking, etc. I just felt it was a little long for the same action. I think somebody else is trying to speak, but the microphone isn't on.
Sorry, I just had to swap from the headset from the phone to the desktop. Sorry about that. Yeah, when we were devising the movements, we were looking at what kind of play would happen between a child and a mother in the park, and the hands took on the metaphor of the mountain. So through the devising, the dancer we were working with was creating the mountain with their arms, and it just naturally became, that's how we ended up developing the movement. So it's not supposed to be a literal representation always. We were kind of playing around with it, but I think that is a really good point. And just to answer someone else's point about why it's moment 1 and then moment 2, there's 12 moments in this whole experience, and we decided moment 1 and moment 3 were stronger together, as if we were taking them out of the running order of 1 to 12. They were just 2 really impactful moments. But really, to make it easier for the online experience, we should have just removed moment 1 and moment 3, because it's irrelevant. It's just, that's the 3rd chapter in the character's life.
So was that a whole chapter?
Yeah, so each moment represents a chapter, and there are 12 chapters in total of this character's life. But that is if we were doing it live, and this online experience is kind of, it was our response to the lockdown and trying to create something that we could share with people, but it is taken out of context. And yeah, we just forgot to update it in the audio, really.
It did make me think that it was a different way of engaging with an audience, and perhaps it would work for people who don't have so much movement necessarily. So,
yeah,
you could be lying down doing those things, couldn't you?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why we say in the thing, like, if you need to improvise, we want people to improvise. But again, I think the first time you hear something and it tells you to do something, I think we're also programmed to try and follow the instructions. That, I don't know if there was enough room for people to feel like they could experiment with the touch, but maybe that could be a question for Dolly, as Dolly's the next name that I see up on my screen. Thank you so much for that, Ian. And just for time, I'm going to try and get through everyone. But Dolly, how did you feel in the experience? And did you experiment, or were you trying to follow the guided touch?
As some people will know who are a part of this, I don't take instruction very well. But also I had a resistance because, yeah, I'm really interested of the idea of using touch in narrative, but also the kind of complex stuff that might arise from someone who has, I've got fibromyalgia, so touching myself hurts. And also I'm a survivor of abuse, and I was just almost anticipating something awful was going to happen. So I changed the narrative to protect myself, really. So in the second one, where I was being the girl was trying to protect herself, I, instead of doing that motion to my legs, I was rubbing my legs to protect it. So that's how I kind of changed. Yeah, but yeah, I just have a little bit of a concern about people who've got where touch is the issue. Like, it's, you know, sometimes I don't feel like I'm even in my own body. So how would this process work with them? So I'm interested in that bit.
I mean, that's what we're interested in as well. That's
Yeah.
what this whole thing is about. Like, how do we engage with our body, and how does that engagement become an artistic exploration? So this is why it's an R&D, because this is the question, isn't it? Like, how do we as humans learn to appreciate a new art form, a new way of communicating with ourselves? And it almost feels like now more than ever, this self-talk, this self-relationship is quite trendy, isn't it? Like, everyone's trying to work on themselves and have a better relationship with themselves. And I kind of feel like this is an evolution on from that, so that we're not just sort of writing in our journals and processing our emotions, we're also starting to connect again with our body. And I think, like, when there is any kind of barrier and any kind of trauma, it's harder to have that connection with your body, isn't it? So if it's harder, then that means we need it more. We need to address it more than avoid it, because the more we disconnect with our body and our brain, then the worse I feel that we become as artists, predominantly because the reason I want to do this is to find out how, as neurodivergent artists, we can learn to be more expressive and to be more connected to our body. But it also extends to everyone, whether you're disabled or an artist or not. It's like having a healthy relationship with your body can only help us all as a society anyway. So I'm glad that you've brought it up, because it kind of entwines with what we're trying to do in exploring touch as an artistic pursuit. But you can't only have it as an artistic pursuit without recognizing that the body is also a memory of some form of trauma as well.
Yes.
So some people that have done the workshop have brought up parallels between some therapy that they might be having, which actually involves touch, to try and address traumatic experiences. And even though the stories are quite traumatic for the protagonist, they're all exploring the discomfort of touch. Ultimately, that's almost like the subtext to what the project is trying to do, which is find a way to learn how to use the body to create art.
Yes, it's really interesting.
Thank you. Were you, when you said that you were smoothing, rubbing your legs, another person that participated said something similar, that they felt they wanted to hug their legs. They saw it as that they were hugging the character. They didn't feel like they were the character. And when you were touching yourself, were you doing it as the character, or were you doing it more outside of that narrative?
Well, the first one, it was me doing it to someone else. The second one, no, I felt it was me. Yeah.
I mean, that's another thing that we're really curious about, like this transition where, as an audience member, we go from being the voyeur and watching this happen in our own mind to then becoming the character and experiencing it experiencing it physically. And I wonder whether or not, sorry, that's my dog in the background.
That's fine.
I wonder whether or not the change of whether we see it happening to a character or whether we feel it happening to ourselves is connected to whether or not we're engaging in the touch experience of the piece.
Yes.
So that's why it's still R&D. There's still more questions than answers at the moment. Thank you, Dolly. I'm going to go to Joe. Again, Joe, the same thing for you. Feel free to either respond to something you've heard or speak about your own experience.
Okay. I think the whole experience reminded me of when and I don't think I'm alone in this, but when you're having a discussion, like a therapy talk, or you're talking about something that is particularly uncomfortable, or you're in a situation that's uncomfortable and you find your hands are like squeezing themselves, or you're pulling like your leg hair or something. And I think it's a sort of rewiring effect where it's something for your brain to focus on rather than maybe the question or giving the answer that you're supposed to be giving. And I found that the whole experience seemed to remind me of that. The first moment was so, I mean, it made me feel really, really anxious. Firstly, I didn't think that the protagonist was outside of myself. I felt like I was situated in that role. And I don't know, I mean, it's very ASMR, where that kind of overtly cute and cuddly mummy sort of voice that's going on, I think registers within me as something quite sinister. And I found that my hands were sort of almost clasping themselves like this, like throughout. And I think where it is, where you're being spoken to and it's lulling, it made me feel very, almost in the way that meditation does, you're sort of outside of yourself. And I thought then when that moment ended and then it went into being directed on what to do with my own body, it was a way of kind of recentering me or bringing me back into the room, refocusing or focusing in something else. So I felt very engaged. And I thought that kind of pull with the story and then brought back into somewhere else through touch was a really interesting way of bringing me in and out of different worlds where I felt implicated like throughout. So I'm not sure I was able to necessarily take on much of the story or instruction or information as maybe I should have, or I feel like there's stuff that I've missed, but I do on an experiential level or an emotional level feel like I was taken through a series of different rooms and places.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we were trying to do in terms of like moving through their life. So if you imagine a life as a corridor of doors, we were literally wanting to open different doors up into this character's life and like immerse the audience in that moment of that character's life. There is no doing what you should have done. Like what we're interested in is like we give you the stimuli and then see what happens. Because with memory, like you can't control what you're going to think of. And like how Daniel said earlier on, he had an argument with his mom and it changed his experience of the piece. He's not the first person to say that to us. So we're really aware that wherever you are and whatever you've just done, it's going to have an impact in how you experience this. And every time you would go back in, you're not necessarily going to have the same experience, even if you know exactly what's going to happen, because it's becomes a personal retelling. And that's something that we're really, really interested in as well, in terms of like how memory can almost be reshaped or manipulated so that the experience is always affected by the emotional state of the participant before they go into the experience. So for example, if you had just had an argument with your partner or a brother or a sibling or whatever, if you've just had an argument, the resonance of that argument, that like tension or anger is still in your body and it's going to affect how you feel. And this is why we're really interested in learning more about the body and how we connect to the body to create narratives from our bodies, because our bodies are constantly changing the way that we think and feel based, like if you're hungry, it will change your mood, or if you've got a headache, it changes your mood. So our bodies are constantly reshaping our feelings and our memories. And I just feel like, yeah, just to go back to what you said, there is no right or wrong way of experiencing it. It's literally wherever you are as the participant within the experience of the piece, you then create the new narrative for the piece. And I think that's also really quite exciting as well. Thank you, Joe. I'm going to move on to Lorraine, but thank you so much for your contribution.
Can I just add one very quick thing? Thank you. When I said should, or I feel like I didn't do the right thing or something like that, I think I'm responding to some of the instructions are very suggestive, like you may fall into a pit of darkness or something, and then others are quite didactic. They're like, you will do, or something. So I think it was a lexical thing.
I mean, I think it's because language is so weird to me. Like, as a neurodivergent person, like, I'm always confused by it. So I think when I create art, I think the language is always challenging the subtext of what does this mean? What could it mean? How could you change the meaning of it? So yeah, I think that you're always going to get that, aren't you? Like, especially if you are also neurodivergent, you're then going to be translating that language again in your own way.
Totally.
And there is never, I don't think, like a clear way of communicating. I think communication is always muddy. So yeah, that's good that you felt like that. Basically, that's how we feel most of the time.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, thank you, Jo. I'm going to move on to Lorraine, but once again, thanks for your contribution.
Hi. Yeah, I was quite surprised by how quickly I became immersed in the experience, and that the touch was a very big part of that. So there were moments where I kind of opened my eyes to check in with myself, and it felt more like an experience I'm used to, a sound piece where you're just kind of letting the words wash over you. You feel like an observer. But the touch, regardless of what it was, really brought me into my own body and my own memories in a way that I didn't expect it to. It felt much more profound, and I could feel my brain sort of filling in the blanks. So there was elements where I was like, I don't really have a memory of running down a hill, but I do remember this. So it was kind of projecting me into the situation, and it felt like I was kind of going deeper and deeper into it, like a meditation, which was really interesting and very surprising. I didn't expect it to go quite deep. But having said that, what Dolly previously said about the kind of the trauma aspect and bringing up memories, I certainly found that happening as well myself with my own experiences. I could feel certain things coming up, so I was like, oh, I'm not really comfortable with this. And like she said, with the kind of pounding on the shins, I started to stroke my shins as well, because it felt like that's a wee bit too far. I need to kind of just go with something that makes me more comfortable just now. And that's my only kind of element that I feel is maybe not missing in this experience, because I understand this is development. But if I were to engage in this experience in a group, in a setting where we're all in person, I think I would want something to follow it. So something at the end where it brings me back into now. It brings me back into this space and this time, my body as it is now, makes me feel more safe. But yeah, that's the stuff that was right at the front of my mind as we've been talking just now.
Yeah, we were talking about that with our mentor and producer, and they said that you need to have like an offboarding and an onboarding. So we've got the onboarding at the beginning, like, you know, we're setting the scene, but we don't do that at the end. So that is something that in the next reincarnation of this, we are putting funding into the Arts Council again to sort of go again. That would be one of the things that we'd really love to explore more on, how you safely do that without it become like we're not positioning ourselves as therapists, like we're artists and we're telling stories, and we want it to stay that, because that's what I would be stupid to try and do anything else without the training and the experience. But to be, to make sure that we're not causing any harm to the audience is something that we need to to readdress in the next edit of this. I mean, half of it is that is how safe do we have to make people? Like, I'm always curious about that, because when you go into an art gallery experience, you understand that you know, this isn't an art gallery experience. You can't always be responsible for how people are going to respond. So from that, we started thinking about what is a safe space and what is a brave space. And is that too noisy, Kels? Can everyone hear the drilling in the background? It's so noisy. So what was I saying? Yeah, so the difference between a safe space and a brave space, and wanting to not make everything so safe that we stop challenging ourselves, because even if we find things uncomfortable, that could be a notice that we need to address that through therapy or through medication or through whatever. So like, to not want to switch off the memory of trauma, I think, is also quite interesting, but again, from an artistic perspective, not from a medical perspective. From a medical perspective, maybe what I've said is really I don't know, dangerous, but through an artistic experience, I feel like if the audience is open and they are willing to explore, and we find a way to make sure that they've got the brave space to do that, I think that creates an exciting opportunity for artist and audience to have that dialogue. But I am also totally agreeing with you, because it's something we are going to do. But the rebel in me goes, well, what happens if you don't?
No, I totally agree, because there's a real richness. I mean, I've learned something just in this short experience that has been very interesting, and there's a richness to getting to explore that. But I think it was very helpful for me at the very beginning. You said, do it in your own way. So I knew I had that seed planted, that I knew that I wasn't going to miss anything if I didn't follow it to the letter, because I don't want to miss anything. Yeah. So that really helped. So maybe just giving that extra information, making sure people know when they come in. And like my own experience of certain types of therapies that do kind of explore these issues and then bring you back, it can be something that's very, very straightforward. You know, it doesn't have to be like a therapeutic undertaking. It can be about just talking about, we're in this room now and this is what's happening and this is the time and the date, you know, something very, very simple and to the point.
And I think, again, it adds to the richness to have that built-in part of it. It becomes more than just an art experience. It actually has a more meaningful impact if we are, and it is something that has come up, and it's actually given us the idea to work with a therapist to get the language right, to make sure that if this was experienced on a one-to-one, you kind of have a different option. And if you are doing it as a group, like, what does it look like as a group? And that's kind of happened with the lockdown, where we're really rethinking, well, how can people experience this? And now there are even more options, aren't there? You can have it on your own, you can have it at home, you can have it in the studio with an actor, you can have it in a group, and each different rendition of this has to have its own script. But the fact that there are so many ways of doing it is really quite exciting, because then it just means that we're having a bigger conversation with more people. But with that comes with more responsibility, so more work. So yeah, and more work means more money. But yeah, I agree with everything you've said, and it's something that we want to do because it's quite exciting to see what can happen from it. Definitely. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hannah, you are next. And the same thing for you again, Hannah. Either comment on what you've heard, or feel free to comment on your experience in of the two moments.
Great. Yeah. So yeah, I had a few difficulties at the beginning, just tech-wise. So I actually kind of missed the touch instructions, but kind of coming in to moment 3, sort of having a vague idea of, you know, what was going to be experienced. I sort of automatically just started like just kind of listening to the story and actually just touching my legs, and it did kind of become automatically kind of a bit more aggressive as the story repeated, and I sort of immersed myself. And I think Joe touched upon this a little bit, but obviously, like, because what you're doing is related to the story, that helps to immerse you, but also personally, like I find it extremely hard to sit still, and I will fiddle with something, or like, you know, pick my nails or something, and in a way that's a way of concentrating. So actually having a prescribed action that you're doing really helped to focus my mind and just allow my body to sort of not be distracting itself by thinking what to do with my body while I'm present in this experience. So I thought that was really interesting. And I think, the other thing is actually kind of a bit of a question. I know you said about it wouldn't be online, but it would be live. And I just wondered, like, how you were thinking of kind of facilitating that experience, and would it, you know, be in a group or one-on-one? I think partially because actually I just, even if it's live, I really love the use of headphones. Like, it makes it feel so intimate. And actually, especially not having like buds, but having like over ear headphones, I like just the touch of having this like over my head. In a way, it feels like I've got someone like kind of clasping over my ears, and even regardless of what's happening and me kind of like pinching my legs and stuff, I don't know, in a way it makes me feel kind of safe.
Yeah, I mean, originally this was meant to be a VR piece, so that, you know, you are completely immersed, your head's in the technology.
Yeah.
So originally that's what it was going to be, and we were going to have an actor. All of this touch that you've been doing to yourselves, originally an actor would have done that.
Yeah.
Which creates even more issues for a lot of neurodivergent people that don't want anyone else touching them. So it was literally always about, I'm neurodivergent and I've got ADHD and dyslexia, and you know, we've all got loads of things, but I was really interested in what is that journey like? How do these two bodies communicate? And people are always know what immersive theatre is, because we've all experienced that, but there's never any touch in immersive theatre, not really. Like, that's always been the line that you don't cross, you don't touch. And I just started, and Kaz and I that made this piece together, we just started thinking about, how does touch lead a narrative? You know, instead of it always being the word and the text and the poetry and the script and the dialogue, like, what happens if the bodies start creating dialogue? So it began as an idea of like, could an actor build a conversation with an audience member who is visually in their headset, but the actor's hands are on the body of the participant? And can something begin to develop in this duologue between the actor and the participant? So that was the first idea. And it was always meant to be a one-on-one experience, this like one-on-one sort of whispering theatre versus, like, not versus, but with the technology of the headset. And then when we were no longer able, you know, when we all went into lockdown last year, we had to think, well, you know, we have to keep going. Like, what's the next evolution of this? And what do we have available to us? And all we have available are people at home on the internet. So therefore, the natural next step is that we think about the language we use to get the audience to touch themselves. And then we were curious to see whether or not by doing that, whether they touch themselves, if they become the character, or if they resist becoming the character. And even in the beginning of the dialogue, I think I mentioned something about you might experience some resistance. And that is also something that we're really interested in, because if you're home alone by yourself, you know you're safe, you're in control, you can take off your headset whenever you want. If you're still resisting, then it's a case of like, then we've touched a nerve, and there's something there that the participant has to address, right? So it's if we go to art to learn more about ourselves, if that is the job of art, to learn more about ourselves and more about society, then art has to be allowed to make us vulnerable. Otherwise, we're just looking at pretty pictures and nothing's really happening. So yeah, we're really interested in how touch makes us vulnerable, but how that touch dialogue creates art, and how the act of the touch is also the art as well. So in the same way that you've got dancers, could touch become equal to dance? Like, you know, I don't know, like, we're just kind of guessing at the moment, we're just exploring, but it's an exciting place to be because anything's possible right now. And yeah, and like I think I mentioned with Lorraine, like, it could become an experience you have in a group or on your own. And because of lockdown, we've had the opportunity to experiment with that. So it can be experienced in multiple ways, giving the audience more choice on how they want to participate. So instead of us saying, right, if you want this, you have to come to our studio and it's going to be you and 10 people and we're all going to be together in a room and it's going to be really cozy. Or we can say, well, but you might not like that, because I mean, I don't know if I'd sign up to something like that. But now people have the choice of going, well, actually, I want to participate, but I don't want to be in that environment. I want to participate on my terms. And through the internet, we've got that option now. So it's quite exciting. So I'm going to move on to Ivan, but thank you again, Hannah, for your contributions. Ivan, I think you're the last participant to comment. And if you feel like everything's been said, I totally understand. But if you are able to just share your experience, it would be wonderful to hear your feedback.
Sorry, I was really late.
Oh, don't worry.
I found it, I couldn't relate to it. I just said to myself, well, this is bollocks, I can't relate to this. And I realised that my thing wasn't on mute when I came in. I thought, oh God, I hope it, because I wasn't talking about the work, I was talking about the situation. I really saw just the last one. So I'm sorry I couldn't get in any earlier, but I've had a bad day. I tried following all that, and you know, like well, like Dolly, I was manipulated as a child by an adult, and the work you're doing does center around manipulation. You're you know, all art does, you know, all art manipulates in some way, but you're going into a more direct route and you're getting responses, and you're sort of slightly veering into psychodrama and psychotherapy. And you know, there are issues that you will face about a safe space, and you cannot easily create a safe space by doing this. So I just wanted to ask you, you know, you're taking quite a risk, aren't you?
So it depends on where someone is when they're experiencing it. So and this is a question for everyone, like you've all experienced it at home on your own. How unsafe would that make? How unsafe is that if you're on your own at home? Because I can understand it being maybe more of a challenging situation if it is the actor audience one-on-one. You know, the original idea probably is a bit more challenging in that sense. But if participants choose to experience this on their own, in their own environment, how unsafe are they?
Well, I'll feed back to that. You couldn't possibly know unless they fed that back to you. Someone could be totally silent, someone who self-harms, for instance, and they could directly self-harm themselves after the experience. That's possibility. It's not it wouldn't be your fault, but you can't judge where it's going to go. So that's, you know, that's something that you might maybe look at as a negative response, but I see as a positive response, because this is about how we manipulate people as artists. And it's not just pretty pictures. People who do pretty pictures manipulate people in other ways. They might make them feel good about their sofa because it's the same color or stuff like that. So it's all manipulation.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I find it highly intriguing where you're going to go with this. You know, like you give us a story to follow, or a dialogue, and ask us to follow by how we touch our bodies. I have an awkward relationship with my body as it is. And a lot of people I know have awkward relationships with their body. But, you know, like, I think it's a worthy pursuit. You know, it's an interesting pursuit. It's just, you know, like, I don't know how you feel whereabout, you know, like, if I was doing this, I would feel very vulnerable as the artist doing it.
And would you feel the same if you were just reading poetry?
To an extent, not quite so much, because I'm not asking people to do something.
But if the instructions were, because another idea that we had for this project as a follow-on is that, you know, there are all they are 12 poems.
Mm.
They're written as poems. They're performed as performance poetry, and then there's the guided touch as a list of ideas and instructions on how to participate.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
If you were reading it as a poem, so even those list of instructions could be seen as poetic text, for argument's sake.
Mm.
If you're reading it as text, do you feel that it would still be, do you still feel that the artist or the participant might be vulnerable to this same extent? Or is it just the physical touch of, like,
I think is
the act of touching that makes it feel unsafe?
You're breaking through the fourth wall, as you directly breaking through the fourth wall. You're not just talking to the audience or the viewer. You're breaking through by getting them to, you know, like, getting them to touch themselves. So therefore, it's directed.
Yeah.
And
that is deliberate.
I know. I felt at times through it, while I was trying to do it, I felt manipulated, directly manipulated, told what to do. And you know, like, I think you go through, some people say, well, I felt uncomfortable, so I did this instead. I curled up into a ball or whatever. I'm not a big fan of being directly manipulated, so there has to be a negotiation. So the lead-in has to be, if I was running an exercise like with this, would be a longer lead-in and a longer negotiation with my audience. So it would start with warm-ups and stuff like that. For me, if I was doing a workshop like this.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that, because when I was listening to it, I was thinking, oh, does it take too long? No. You know, because you've got the introduction, and then you've got the list of instructions, and I think the instructions they come through twice for each poem. I know that you missed part of it, so it is different for you, because I appreciate that you came in a bit late. But I'm wondering, and again, this question is for anyone, if everyone also felt like they needed more time. And I'm always worried that everything is already taking too long, because I've got ADHD and everything just always feels like it's taking too long. So it'd be good to hear whether or not people felt like they did need more warm-up time or not, because that's something that, no. So maybe just put your hands up if you feel like you did.
Can I just feed back to that, and then I'll shut my mute, put my mute back on.
Oh, yeah. I just thought it was a really good question,
I would have, you know, like, if I'd have been in the right space, you know, like not been able to get here earlier, whatever, I would have preferred that you had a couple of hours for a session like this.
Wow. So it is actually
because of the intimacy of it, and if you want feedback and people to make their own stories out of it, which is what you said earlier, then they would need that time to do that. and to engage. So I think, you know, an hour is not long enough.
Yeah. Okay.
It feels like putting your toe in the water.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, that kind of feel. I didn't think about this being an all-day workshop. I kind of imagined it as a performance, or as like something you do online, or as a book. I mean, we even spoke about maybe making it a record, and like you just stay at home and you listen to the poems and you interact as much or as little as you want. But it actually being a full-day workshop is
it would have to be, because I would want to see all 12 chapters.
Yeah. That's
so
really
I had the context and the lead up, and then I could acclimatize to the situation, and I could get to trust you as leading it, and to have a feel of, you know, wrong words, not have a feel of everyone else.
No, I
like, get to know everyone else as well. So, because in that way, you know, like you've negotiated a safe space.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And it's actually making my brain go, oh, actually, this is what we could do now. So yeah, thank you so much for that feedback. I realized that we've gone over by 15 minutes, and I want to apologize to everyone for running over. If I can pass over to Disability Arts Online, who are our lovely hosts for this and have been a massive support on so many of the DYSPLA projects. It'd be really nice to hear from either Colin or who's still.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Yeah. Thanks, Lenny. That was a really, really powerful experience. I mean, I have to say, I found it deeply upsetting. Yeah, was kind of crying all the way through, and I think, you know, there was an element of catharsis there. Yeah, as a kind of artistic concept, I think it's really interesting. I think there's all kinds of different ways that you can go with this, and I'm really intrigued just to see how you develop it. I think that in a way, you know, it's impossible to get away from the kind of psychotherapy element of it, because it's, you know, that sort of using touch to take you so directly and deeply back into your childhood experience. It's just part of it, isn't it? You know, you can't really get away from that. And I think, like, I agree with Ivan, you know, thinking about responsibility to your audience is really important. I think it's worth kind of doing this kind of thing a few times over to get more of an idea of people's responses. You know, it's kind of, in this setting, it's kind of a safe setting, isn't it? Because we mostly know each other, and we have a kind of a sense of what this is for beforehand, rather than, you know, we're not coming in completely cold, as it were. So I think the R&D around kind of how you facilitate a brave space. I quite liked that expression, actually, because there's something about creating a safe space which is always a bit, I don't know, coddling, or, you know, it's sort of nannying in some way that's not completely healthy or true or authentic. Whereas a brave space, I think, it's because it is it is about pushing yourself as an audience member. It's about challenging yourself, and very, very powerful piece of work. we've got to wrap up because we've gone over so far. But I just wanted to say, you know, the introductory bit just took me immediately into the 2 times in public setting where I've been invited to touch. One was a meditation setting with a group where, as a group of strangers, we were invited to touch each other's feet. And another setting, which was it was a parent support group where we were invited to touch as a kind of part of a program of self-care. And they were, you know, they were really lovely experiences. And I think using touch in, you know, exploring touch in this way, making it a more kind of an artistic statement. I think it's a really, really interesting, innovative piece of work.
Thank you for that, Colin. I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate everyone's feedback as well. It's been a while since we've returned to this. I think the last workshop we had was in February. So it's nice to just come back to it and have new ideas and feel inspired by the project again. So thank you to everyone for their really generous feedback. And yeah, art is a manipulation, because everything is, like sales is, advertising is, stories are. Stories manipulate us to do something at the end of them, whether it's morally or I don't know. So I think it is interesting to see, like, what's the point of art, and what's the point of the manipulation, and to see where those two things come together, I think is interesting. For me, I was exploring if touch could become an artistic exploration and story on its own. But I totally appreciate you can't really have one without the other. Like, everything is, we're constantly manipulating our audiences. So I think that's quite a nice place to end on. So thank you for that, Ivan. I think that's going to be in everyone's mind and memory. We're just manipulators. Oh, God. So yeah, thank you everyone. Sorry again that we're at 21 minutes over, but I've really enjoyed sharing this with you all, and it'd be nice to hear from you, maybe not now, but through email, just about your own practice and how touch resonates with your own practice as well.
Cool, thanks Lenny.
Thanks very much.
Thanks everyone.
Cheers. Thanks everyone for being